Back, Adrian Peterson disciplined his 4-year-old son last May with a switch. That discipline, in the words of an assistant district attorney in Montgomery County, Texas, went beyond what would be considered, quote, reasonable. That leaves Peterson facing a felony charge for injuring his child, as well as a review by the NFL under its toughened personal conduct policy. Peterson turned himself in early Saturday morning and posted $15,000 bond. He has returned to Minnesota, but the Vikings decided to deactivate Peterson for the game against the Patriots. Peterson has yet to address the charges, and his first court appearance has not been scheduled. But if it comes to this, a trial would be held next year. We're having a conversation today about this. Stephen A. Smith, what do you believe the NFL and the Vikings should do in response to these charges?
It's tough to say, to be quite honest with you, because, first of all, what transpired based on what we saw in those pictures was child abuse. Anybody that saw those pictures, those marks on the child, and you hear they were on the legs and the ankles and the back and the arms, that's child abuse. It's a 4-year-old child, all right? There's nothing to say, there's nothing else to say other than it's child abuse. Now, you're going to have people explain it away. I saw the statement from Rusty Hardin, the lawyer for Adrian Peterson. And on one hand, you hear where the lawyer's coming from as it pertains to Adrian Peterson's upbringing. So you hear stuff like that and you say, okay, from a generational perspective, I can only speak from what I know, being a black man, having relatives, knowing what transpired in my household. You understand? I've had my behind whipped. It wasn't often. And it wasn't with a switch, but I had my behind whipped with a belt. I saw my sister get hit with a broomstick. I know relatives that have used a switch on their child from a generational perspective. So when Rusty Hardin, the lawyer, explains that, I know it's true, but it doesn't excuse it because we've evolved as a society. We've learned more. And this generation ain't that generation. And you're supposed to know better. I remember when my uncle one time hit my cousin, and the police came, and my uncle said, this is about 30 years ago. My uncle said to the police, you wanna raise this kid? Because I'm trying to teach this kid discipline. And the police looked at him and said, you have a point, and walked away. Here's the problem. There's no way in hell that's happening today. You know better. Adrian Peterson has to know better. And to make this kind of error in judgment, particularly towards a child, a 4-year-old child, there is no excuse for this. You could try to explain it away. I cannot. But it also resonates with me on a different level, Skip Bayless. Because even though we're talking about Adrian Peterson in terms of child abuse, and obviously, whether better for worse or whatever, because there is no better as far as I'm concerned, but you could consider the Ray Rice situation and involve 2 adults.
Yep.
Let me read some names to you, Skip Bayless. From USA Today, NFL players arrested. Robert Sands, Chris Rainey, Leroy Hill, Amari Spivey, Darrell Washington, A.J. Jefferson, Ray Rice, Greg Hardy, Adrian Peterson. It resonates with me even more substantially because every single one of these players are black. Every one of them. Now that's starting to, and that's hitting home for me as well. So it's a double whammy because it's wrong, but then you see it emanating from our community consistently, where if the police blotters were made public, which it is, I'm just talking about on TV, I know it's public, but then you put mug shots up in there, you just see black men all over the place. And that's a conversation, I guess, for a different day, but maybe it is for the day, because I also have a letter here. You know what this letter here is, Skip? This is from the House Judiciary Committee. 12 members of the committee, all Democrats, wrote a letter to Roger Goodell calling for more transparency, questioning why he couldn't get a hold of the tape, wanting to make sure that the public knows, everybody knows what needs to be done, because this is a problem that needs to be addressed. And it was signed by 12 members of the House Judiciary Committee, and it was CC'd to every single commissioner in sports, from soccer to Major League Baseball, hockey, basketball, etc. Look, man, in the end, here's what these guys have to recognize. Society, we've evolved. We've transitioned to a different time. Certain things that were once tolerated are not going to be tolerated now, and they better get with the program, because everyone from the government itself to the leagues to Joe Public are sending a message. They are getting sick and tired of this nonsense. And you brothers had better get your act together or else. And unfortunately, when I say brothers, I'm not just talking about men.
Yeah.
On this particular instance, I have no choice but to aim it directly at black men, because there's nobody but black men being arrested for this kind of nonsense. Man, let me stop right there before I say something, man. Go ahead, man.
You covered a lot of ground. Let's go back to Adrian Peterson, and we can deal with the larger issue in a moment. May I please make the point as a white man?
Please.
This is not just a black family thing.
Okay.
On generational.
All right.
Hey, I was sent into the backyard to pick the switch with which I was going to be switched. I got the belt all the way up to 7th, 8th grade. We got bare butt paddled in school. So this is my generation.
Sure.
And listen, when I was 4 or 5 years old, if my father really got mad at me, and he was not a good man, but he would use open hand with wedding ring, quote unquote wedding ring, ironically, boom, you know, bruised cheek, you know, it's the way it was. Did I think twice? I didn't. I thought that's the way it was. You were probably raised
the same exact way. Look, when we first heard about this, my mother, some of the stuff she did in today's standards, she'd be under the jail. I literally under the jail. If I called the cops and said this woman spanked me, told me to grab my belt, and I got my whooping, quote unquote.
Okay.
It doesn't work today.
Okay, so I'm not even sure what generations are applying here. You're far younger than I am.
Yeah.
You were in Los Angeles, California, Pasadena, California. You're in New York City, in the borough of Queens. I'm in the middle of the country, in the Southwest, in Oklahoma City.
Sure.
And we're all pretty much getting raised kind of the same way, and it's the old spare the rod, spoil the child, right? Okay, so my only question here about Adrian Peterson is, and trust me, you were so dead right. This was child abuse. This was assault of a 4-year-old to me. And in no way, shape, or form am I trying to make an excuse for Adrian Peterson or let him off the hook. But when you ask me that question of how should he be punished by his team and his league, I'm with you. I don't know. I've never heard of this before. Sure. Now it's falling into a new realm where I'm very uncomfortable with what the punishment should be because of this. I do not believe that Adrian Peterson thought he was doing wrong when he was switching that kid. Am I right?
Neither do I.
Okay, in his heart of hearts, he thought his heart was in the right place. He thought he was doing a good thing, though he did admit in a text to the mother, I got a little carried away. I'm paraphrasing, but he said he got a little carried away. Now remember, pound for pound, this just might be the strongest man in the National Football League. And anybody who's ever shaken hands with Adrian, no, he can crush your hand in a handshake. So obviously, he's a candidate for getting carried away with a 4-year-old when he's trying to mete out his punishment. Am I right?
Sure.
Okay, but in his heart of hearts, and I know Adrian fairly well, and he's a Bible-fearing, Bible-toting man. You know, he believes in the Bible, but he's old school. But there are those in the NFL who use drugs, or they assault somebody in a bar, or they assault a woman in their home, and they're doing something wrong, man. They could go to jail for this. Adrian's father went to prison for 7 years because he was laundering money for a crack cocaine ring in Palestine, Texas, okay? Did he know he was at risk? Sure he did. Am I right about that? Okay,
yes.
But now, how do we punish something that we all agree was dead wrong? He went completely over the edge with this punishment and pretty much admitted that. But now how do we punish him? Because if I say, okay, the Vikings should suspend him for 4 games, well, then somebody's going to accuse me of condoning child abuse, because a lot of people would like Adrian gone for, banned for life for this, right?
Yeah.
But, okay, but don't you think the reason why this is so uncomfortable, because now we're saying how you should discipline your children?
Okay, we can't get, I don't know, that's your call, but there's a law that says you can only go this far.
Okay, so you don't know about the punishment.
Well, you've made the good point. We have pictures now, thanks to the DA, and the doctor that looked at over this.
The fact is that if the mother of Adrian Peterson's child had reported that Adrian Peterson did this and there were no pictures, we'd be like, well, what's the problem? That's none of our business.
Sure.
There's two parents, dealing with their child. You see what I'm saying? You told her, to us it sounds like a spanking. But here's where Adrian Peterson could be in deep water.
Well, I think he is in deep water, but go ahead.
No, I don't mean, I'm talking about when we talk about in terms of punishment.
Okay.
What I'm saying is there's so much information that is out there in this day and age.
Yep.
And there are so many things that the NFL exposes their athletes to in terms of counseling and whether it's therapeutic or beyond or a little bit less excessive than that, whatever the case may be. The combination of information combined with access, combined with the society that we live in, not to mention the repeated perpetual complaints from society about what others may tend to get away with in the world of professional sports. All of these things are thrown out there for these athletes to absorb. So somewhere along the way, in the midst of your rage, not only do you need to see that it's a 4-year-old, you also need to see your own future and how something could potentially look if you indeed place yourself in this kind of situation. The fact that you were you appeared incapable or oblivious to that lends itself towards providing an indication that there was some kind of rage that you were enduring at that particular moment, which heightens or gives credence to the belief that this child got abused in that particular situation. And so when you connect the dots on that level, he's in a tough spot here.
Yes, he is.
But at the same time, you're right.
Right, but okay, so Stephen A., the Vikings deactivate him on Sunday. How do you believe the NFL and the Vikings should respond?
I don't know. I, honest to God, don't know.
It's a tough one.
Because, look, I can look at Ray Rice in that video, and I can legitimately say what he deserved.
Right.
Okay? I'm thinking about a parent spanking their child excessively. I got a problem with it. I don't like it.
And you're a parent.
That's right. Yeah. But I don't like it because I've been educated.
Okay.
I agree. And I do think this is another one of those great teaching moments where I think a lot of people of generations can be enlightened that you can't bring blood here,
Bottom line, here's the best way I can close this out. If this were the 60s or the 70s when I was a kid, I literally would have been like, what's the problem? This is basically normal to me. It's the fact that we're in the year 2014.
And in the wake of this the climate has changed.
You said something. You said this has been these past 2 weeks in the NFL, and I don't want to put all the onus on the league, but some great teachable moments. From the Ray Rice situation, we see domestic violence. We have a picture. We have faces. I know people may feel like, so what? We've already known about it, but we really are understanding it at this point in time. And the same thing with Adrian Peterson. What should the NFL do? How should the Vikings respond? That's a tough ask.
Now, you said he doesn't.
He said he doesn't know.
But you said that Adrian should have known better. Well, now he knows better.
Now he does.
Right?
Now.
Yeah.
Knows better now.
Okay.
All right.
I don't know.
I know.
I am lost on this one because this is. I can't. In all my years of covering the league, I can't remember this ever coming up as an issue. Do you? I don't remember anything in any sport.
And to be honest, when we discussed it this morning, we didn't know how to go about it, and we didn't have any answers. And so we just wanted to present the conversation. We'll have more First Take after the break.